Hello again. Hi, how are you? I hope you're fine. I hope you're doing well. I'm back with another segment, and I'd like to talk to you more about energy. I've mentioned it several times before, and what does that have to do with your health? Well, a lot. In fact, the ancient peoples, there's that word again, there's that the belief system of the ancient peoples have always been one of holism, rather than the duality that we usually live with in our physical world. This and that, left and right, all those things. The ancient peoples lived with a more holistic attitude. And in fact, that's what I've studied for many, many years, both formally and informally, academically, as well as through all the countless number of courses that I've taken throughout the years, and what I've worked with personally. So you cannot take spirituality and energy, the invisible world, out of the physical. They are one and the same. And unfortunately, since Isaac Newton and René Descartes, two individuals who sort of facilitated the separation of the physical and the energetic or spiritual, we have been under misunderstanding, actually, of how life and health and this world we live in, how it works. So, I've also mentioned the chakra system before, the energy centers that we have in our body, and they aren't usually in photos or pictures. The chakra system, the energy centers, are usually depicted just on the front, but they're not. They're actually through us. And these energy centers also affect our physical body. So, for example, I'll just mention, I will do a whole segment on the chakra system. But for an example, the root chakra, which is located at the top of the pubic bone, is also related to support and financial support, emotional support, based on our survival, so to speak. And so that's just one. I'll go through the whole chakra system in another segment, but in this video, I would just like to emphasize the importance of the energetic part of us, the spiritual, invisible, non-physical part of us that is very integrated into our physical being. And, even doctors are starting to not deny it so much. Science is catching up with all the ancient wisdom, in fact, and quantum physics explains the spiritual world in most ways, actually. Max Planck, in fact, one of the greatest physicists, has been quoted as saying that there is no matter as such. It's all made up of particles. Everything is made up of particles. Anyhow, and what has that all got to do with health? Well, what it has to do with health is that much of our well-being, much of our health has to do with our mental and our spiritual, our emotional attitude. not just the physical. The physical symptoms manifest when things are out of balance, in fact. But doctors even recognize something called the placebo effect, if any of you have ever heard of that. In other words, when they do pharmaceutical trials even, they will take one group of individuals that they will give the real medicine, well, the real pill, I'll put it that way, and another group of people who will get just a placebo, or in other words, a sugar pill, or a pill that has really nothing in it. And lo and behold, they have found in many of the situations that the people in the placebo group are getting the same benefit from this non-existent pill, really, as the ones that are getting or receiving the real medication or the real pharmaceutical. So how does that happen? How does that happen? Power of suggestion? Mind over matter, in fact, in a lot of ways. Because what we think, we manifest. I'm not really religious, but even in a biblical sense, in the Bible, it says about the Word became flesh. Well, where do you think that came from? The Word, meaning the frequency, the idea, first the idea, then the thought, the continual thought, and that frequency actually manifests into reality, into our physical reality. I know to some of you I may sound completely insane, but that's okay, because I have had many of these notions for a long time before I was even able to articulate them. I don't know how many of you have watched some of my earlier videos, but for example, I come from some of this knowledge naturally because my grandmother was not religious, but very spiritual also, and explained things to me in these sort of ways of how things are, and how to cure things, how to cure illnesses, things like that. She always was making teas and potions and different things. My mother, on the other hand, was a clinical nurse, and even she actually submitted to my grandmother quite often. In fact, us kids, me and my cousins, we usually, grandma took care of us more often than not. We did end up going to a doctor. It's not that we never went to a medical doctor, an allopathic doctor, but only if we really needed to. And grandma couldn't fix us. so there you go. Anyway, I truly believe in a lot of the holistic approaches, relaxation. I worked, in fact, I had a clinic in Canada for almost 18 years, and I worked with and really truly believe in the relaxation response, which is to say that when we are able to relax our body, our mind, and really connect to source energy or our spiritual realm or whatever, it's like a prayer, in fact. Many people pray. Many people go to church, and religious people, and they pray. But, prayer means nothing if it's just words coming out of your mouth without any intention. So the intention is also part of the equation when you pray. If you are so inclined, when you pray, pray with intention. Form the words in your mind as you're praying. if that's what you choose to do, if that's how you choose to pray for something. I don't. I usually talk to the universe, just like I'm talking to you now. But yes, with intention. They don't have to be memorized rhetorical words. They can just be your thoughts. And in fact, the emotion and the energy, the attitude, the frequency, the vibration with which you are praying or talking to the universe or whatever you want to call it in your own way of thinking, that's what really makes the difference. So I'm back to energy again. Anyway, in my next segment, I think I'm going to elaborate and really explain the chakra system so that you all understand it a little bit better when I mention it, because I do come back to it quite often. Okay, so until the next time, stay well. Keep your energy high. Try to think of positive things. As I've said before, if you start thinking of anything negative, turn it around as soon as you can, as soon as possible. Count your blessings. And until the next time, I'll see you again. Bye.